Hi, my name is Juan, and welcome to The Couch, a podcast where real therapists talk about real things. Please remember that we are therapists, but we are not your therapists, and this podcast is intended for educational purposes only.
Here's a question for you, all right? I need you to listen patiently. Have you ever felt like you love your partner, but something just feels off? Now, intimacy, right? If you're searching through and you're like, I wonder what Juan's going to talk about. It's intimacy. But I want to start with that question. Have you ever felt? You ever felt, maybe even thought, like, I love my partner, I love my wife, I love my spouse, I love my husband, but something's off, and it makes you kind of question the relationship, doesn't it? You start to feel like roommates rather than a happy couple, right? That happiness, that connection, that attachment, something's off. Can't quite put your finger on it. So what I want to do, now I've been married for over a decade. Got 2 kids. Sometimes they behave. That's good. Sometimes they don't. And I roll through the punches, if you will. All of that. I mention all of that because I think the reality is the years that you put into your marriage, it creates opportunity, right? I've been married over a decade. That means for over a decade, I've had opportunities of really great moments and opportunities of challenging moments that gave my spouse and I 2 options. One option is we get the good moment and we savor it together. The other situation would be we go through a challenging moment, right? Like a big challenging moment, and we bump heads and fight and go, who's going to win? Who's going to lose? Or we see that challenge and we come together and we face it and we say, how are we going to address this together? So I think the reality is that your intimacy can be influenced and impacted in a relationship because of variables like how long you've been together, right? Time just gives you more opportunity. That's it. It gives you more opportunity to go up in the relationship, to go down, to come together, or to grow apart. And it's what we do, right? It's what we do. It's what I decide to do during those years. It's what you decide to do in your marriage during those years. I mentioned I'm a dad. I have 2 kids. I think the truth is having kids is hard. There's so much good in it, right? There's moments that I think about my kids and I'm driving and then I want to start crying and then I'm like, stop, just listen to that song, right? Or turn on a podcast, or I lean into it. There's times that I am feeling, some of those feelings, and then I see my wife and she's hot, and there comes one of my kids, right? As the term is, cock blocking, right? They jump right in, and you're just thinking, if you hadn't shown up, things would have went in a whole different direction. But that doesn't mean that I don't love my kids. I do. I love them. I cherish them. I enjoy moments and occasions with them, and seconds and minutes. What it does mean is that having kids, right? It creates an opportunity for now when you are wanting to connect with your partner. You may have your child pop in. It makes it a little bit more challenging. Now you got to reschedule that to a later time, hoping, here's the wild part, right? We're hoping that at a later time, we both have energy. So I've hoped that in these 3 to 4 minutes, you're laughing a little bit, you're giggling a little bit. I think when we talk about intimacy, and if the term sex pops up in this episode, it's important that we stay light on our feet. Sometimes that topic can be so heavy that it's avoided. It causes nausea, anxiousness, right? It makes you feel inferior, as if, shit, something must be going wrong for me to be sitting here with a therapist talking about my sex life. No, not at all. Right? Really what we're doing is we're talking about how you like a sandwich. Now, I bring that up for a moment. Person goes to a restaurant. They sit. Waiter comes. What would you like? I'll have a cheeseburger. Waiter says, how would you like your cheeseburger? You say, well, I'll have it medium. Maybe you say, well done. Or you could be feeling a little bit wild that day and say, medium rare. What the heck, it's Friday. And what would you like to drink? You know what? Bring me an IPA, something not too heavy. Okay. So you've ordered. You've told them what you want on it, right? You say, hold on, waiter, come back. You know what? Hold the mayo. Stick that lettuce on there. Give me some of that onion. I'll take some mustard. No mayo. You're not listening to this podcast episode to learn how to order a burger, right? You're listening because of intimacy, your relationship, how to improve on it, how to address challenges. So I bring that situation up with you because that person ordered that sandwich with confidence. They didn't feel inferior. They knew that. They knew what they wanted, how they wanted it, and why they wanted it. What makes intimacy challenging in a relationship is that these conversations typically do not happen during our upbringing. Think about this for you. When in your life did you have one of your adult caretakers, a parent, a guardian, sit down with you to talk about sex, right? The birds and the bees. Did they go into intimacy? Did they go into how to build connection, how to love yourself, how to repair? What does a short hug versus a long hug mean? Eye contact. What happens if you stare a little bit too long? Not long enough. Communicating while facing each other. Gentle touches through the day and what that means. Now, my relationship, I'll mention this as a little side note here. My relationship with intimacy, I find culturally, there's some individuals that relate to it on a cultural level, others that don't. I grew up in the Dominican Republic. I grew up in a Spanish household. I grew up around that environment. Those were things that I would watch on TV back in the day. I remember sitting with my mom watching novelas, right? These are these like soap operas where you got these characters that look like models and they're going through all these situations in their relationships. And then we're just watching it. I guess in a way it's like these shows like Housewives, right? Those kind of shows, your reality ones. But they had points of it that you were like, yeah, there's no way this could be real. So what I bring to your attention is that when it comes to intimacy, I have a comfort to it, right? Very comfortable. I'm okay with I'm outside with my spouse and I'm holding hands and I touch and I want to kiss her. Those are all very normal signs to me, signs of expression. I also comprehend that I have other individuals I know, and we talk about life, and they share with me, no, I don't feel comfortable with that. They also tell me, they go, I don't feel comfortable with that, but that doesn't mean I love my partner any less. And that's the important part here. How you show affection. It doesn't mean you love someone any less. All it means is you're getting to know yourself, right? So it's much more about you. You're getting to understand who you are. For one of the first places that we're going to look at it's one of my favorite spots to start at, is normalizing the pain points that we have in a relationship, the struggle, right? Most couples experience this pain point at some place in their relationship, some place in that timeline they have, and we'll just term it a point of tension, a point of disconnection. And what happens during that, intimacy begins to slowly fade away, right? And in the beginning of the relationship, intimacy was this dense ass fog that was just like, the kind that you go outside and you're like, oh my goodness, I cannot see 2 cars in front of me, right? That was intimacy, living in your life, living with your partner. And right, and over time, maybe because of a lack of date nights, ask yourself, when's the last time you had a date night? A lack of long kisses for no reason. When's the last time you had one of those? A lack of holding each other. This fog begins to fade. And then when it begins to fade, you start to see the relationship perhaps that's failing. Right? That fog was giving you that dense stability. This fading effect, right? These points in our life that can push against intimacy. And this is not a factor of like having kids will destroy your intimacy, right? That's not what I'm sharing here with you. I'm sharing more of, these are points that often provide an opportunity depending on how you and your spouse deal with them. Kids is one of those factors. Stress is one of those factors. Work burnout, emotional difficulties outside the relationship. So these I like to look at as injuries. So it could be that Steve and Jordan having a great marriage, right? Very intimate, connecting on a emotional, intellectual level, physical level. And then you know what? Steve ends up going through some challenges in his external family. Maybe a cousin he was close to is ill, and that leads Steve to maybe experience some depression, and then he's just struggling with navigating that. He's not wanting to see a counselor, kind of just, closing in, shelling himself like a turtle, and that then begins to create distance from his partner, right? So these again are they're variables, factors that happen in life. Distance doesn't mean that the relationship is broken. So if you feel that, right, because of these factors, it doesn't mean it's broken. Instead, look at it as curiosity, like, I got to pay attention to this. And, that's what's interesting, because that guy I told you about that ordered that cheeseburger, he said no mayo. Burger comes back, and he opens it up, and he looks inside, and he goes, there's some mayo. So he's curious. He says, you know what, this needs a little bit of attention. Calls the waiter over. Excuse me, waiter Jim Bob. Waiter Jim Bob, that's a good name. I need your help. There's some mayo on here. Do you mind having that redone, removed, please? Because he can't have that. He's allergic to the mayo, so that's why he doesn't want the mayo. So it gets addressed. And when it comes to intimacy in your relationship, ask yourself that question. Are you confronting it? When you have space in your relationship, are you confronting it? Are you addressing it? If not, let this episode be a nudge, a little push on the old self. Nudge you forward, push you forward. Let's define intimacy. Let's give it like a definition. And there's many, if you ever get online, you'll probably notice that there's lots of different definitions. So intimacy, I like to see in these categories: emotional intimacy, physical intimacy, and psychological intimacy. When I think about emotional intimacy, right, that's one of the categories. You can make it into a triangle if you want. Emotional intimacy, I'm looking at it and I'm thinking about, at a core level, it means that I want to feel understood. Physical intimacy means that I'm looking for that physical connection, maybe that touch, that affection. Could be sex. Psychological intimacy. This right here, often we miss this one, right? This is not superficial conversations. This is me looking at my spouse and saying to her, I want you to know me, like, deeply, right? Not everyone gets access to you. So this is not, a check-in. How are you doing? How is your day? A box check-in. This is, hey, babe, do you feel like you're living a life that's true to you? Do you feel seen? Years ago, you talked to me about how important it was to be able to do X, Y, Z. And then we've been doing, you've been doing that project. You feel there's purpose in that work that you do, right? You could see that element of psychological intimacy, how it just really goes deep. I think about it as a tree and those roots that go deep into the ground. We can reframe sex as not intimacy, right? It's often a result of intimacy. There's some debate on that. I've met different individuals. And once again, when I show up on here on this podcast, I'm showing up as a resource. No way am I sharing with you that this shit I'm telling you, it's gold, right? There's like 1,000 other podcasts and resources. It's a resource. Put it in front of you. See how it fits into your life. I try to maintain between you and me a nice level of humility. And if you know me at a very core level, I love to laugh. I love to joke. Having humility, knowing that I don't need to be the best, nor do I want to be the best. I want to see myself as growing, as learning. It's personally freed me from that need of perfectionism, that need of reaching a certain place, as if I reach it and then I'm done, right? I like the idea of I'm walking, right? And it's a path that I'm going to enjoy. And when I reach maybe the end of it, there's a detour and it keeps going. So I bring that up, a little tangent there, to let you know that as you listen to this podcast and maybe other episodes you've heard or books you've read, see how it fits you. Know that there's different interpretations. You may be curious. I mentioned these factors like kids, stress, things like that end up impacting a relationship. So there's reasons why intimacy fades. typically is connected to what in that counseling session I would say, you know what, this is a cycle we want to look at, a negative interaction cycle. So intimacy within a relationship, this is me as a counselor, when I'm sitting down with a couple and I see that there's this like an effect of it fading, I'm really looking for a cycle, a negative interaction cycle. And what that is a little food for thought here, is where you have criticism, defensiveness, and then withdrawal. Right, so those are the actions that are taking place. When these negative interaction cycles continue to grow and grow in a relationship, it just chips away at intimacy. And if you think about it from a very basic notion, imagine this. Do you want to have the closest person to you in your life to be someone that criticizes you? I'm sure the answer is no. Second question, do you want the person who's closest to you that you choose, right? So you get to choose who's closest to you. Do you want their reaction to you and your reaction to them be defensiveness? All right, I'm sure the answer is no. And then once again, third question, the person that you choose to be with, that you choose to accept and let them know, these really deep, intimate things about you. Do you want to feel this sense that you have to withdraw, that they have to withdraw? And I assume the answer is no. So when that cycle happens, my friends, that criticism, that defensiveness, that withdrawal over and over and over, it chips away of that intimacy. You start to feel like it's fading. A few other items that can cause intimacy to fade: unresolved conflict, right? So this is that shit that we hold right in our backpack, ready to unleash on our partner. Attachment wounds, right? These are maybe potential attachment wounds we've had from other relationships that just filter in and hurt the current one. Or it could be an upbringing where there's attachment wounds, right? One, just I'm going to make it simple here. Example could be, and there's many, and there's complex ways to look at it from attachment point of view. Could be that I've had a past relationship, and that past relationship, tons of trust issues for whatever reason. Now I'm with my new partner, and they haven't done shit, right? They're showing up, doing a good job. However, I'm having them check all these boxes. I'm having them do all of these extra things, such as, why didn't you answer 5 minutes into my text? Where were you? Et cetera, because of that attachment wound I had in the past, right? It's filtering right into this one and then hurting the intimacy of this one. Another item that can hurt with intimacy, really pushing at the fade, is lack of intentional time, right? Lack of intentional time. That's when you want to sit with your partner and say, hey, we're volunteering to be with each other, and I want to be here. Right? I want to connect with you. That takes us into, what do we do, right? Again, look at this from curiosity, right? It's not broken. All we're doing is we're just saying, hey, this needs attention. So we have an idea now of what breaks down intimacy. I mentioned that cycle. So the intimacy cycle that we want to look at to developing intimacy, rebuilding it, is focused on tools that build muscles. Maybe right now you're walking while you're listening to this. So what are you really doing, right? You're reducing stress. You're building some knowledge through the podcast. Hopefully, fingers crossed. You are building those muscles, right? Strengthening your heart, blood circulation, and so forth. That walk becomes a tool that you use to build XYZ muscles. And we know the answer, very simple. If you choose to do it over and over and over, you become more effective on it. It'll sustain the life that you have. And if you choose not to do it, and no other movement or physical activity, right, the heart weakens, the muscles become a bit more soft, risk starts to introduce itself. It's no different here. So the first tool I wanted to invite you to is 5 minutes, right? 5 minutes. 5 minutes. And during those 5 minutes, be with your partner, be with them deeply, intimately. Ask them things like, not just how was your day. Ask them, what was the high point of your day? What happened? What made it a high point? What was the low point? And earn those 5 minutes, like really invest in them. Second thing you could look at is slowing down conflict. Look, I'm going to be honest with you. Conflict's going to happen. I've been a clinician, job I love and I'm so grateful to, for over a decade. And conflict happens in my relationship, whether it's with my spouse, my kids, a friend. It's just going to happen. There's no way anyone out here is sharing the same brain as me. So the likelihood, right, of that to happen is pretty high. Knowing that, it hopefully provides ease of, it's okay, conflict can happen. The action that we want to take is look at slow down the conflict. And sometimes that means that you may have to hold the weight, or sometimes your partner may have to hold the weight. It could be that you say hey to them. They're paying attention to something else, whatever shit's happening, they don't acknowledge you. You then feel angry, frustrated. Slow down, take a deep breath, right? Approach them with kindness, to receive kindness. One statement that helps a lot here is, help me understand, right? This statement replaces that strong anger, that reactive state, with curiosity. Another tool you can do is intentional physical touch, right? Making sure that everything's okay there, of course. This is non-sexual touch, right? So we're not engaging in sexual touch here. This is more of a touch that builds connection, that builds, in the term pleasure, we can actually create volume to it, right? Pleasure could really lean into that sex category, right? All the way towards the pleasure of climax, right? So we're kind of really going deep in there. We can take pleasure the other way, right? Pleasure could be you're sitting down with each other, and then you say, put your hand right here, and then you rub their hand, and you give them a little massage, right? Now that provides a sense of pleasure. Pleasure could be that you feel alone and your partner comes to you and gives you a deep hug, right? So there's pleasure that I receive in that. What I'm really wanting to instill here is that even terms like that can be challenging for individuals. You may sit down with your partner and they go, "What gives you pleasure?" And it's like, "Oh my goodness, what a hard question." Well, add volume to it. Make the question not as challenging. So that could be many things. Could be pleasure from one arena to another. The last one I want to leave you with here of what to do is this is a relationship strategy, and it's focused on when you turn towards your partner versus away. Now, these are bids, right? Bids of attention, bids for attention. And the way to do this is really pay attention, right? So your partner says, "Hey, do you want to go for a walk?" Right? Turn towards them. Yes, go for a walk. Now, just in case you're unaware, there's an opposite to this that hurts the relationship. Your partner says, "Hey, you want to get a cup of coffee and catch up?" Nah, I ain't trying to do that shit, right? That right away is gonna really turn each of you in the other direction. The likelihood that this person is gonna come back not too high. So turn towards one another. Here's a bit of a case example. Let's imagine a couple. Partner A feels ignored, right? They're feeling that sense of I don't feel like you're paying attention to me. They become critical. Partner B feels attacked by that. They withdraw. Now both of these people feel alone, right? Because the first one that feels feels ignored, and they become critical. They feel alone. The second one, attacking and withdrawing, they feel alone. So we want to be able to understand like what's happening to me in this relationship. Do I feel like I'm being ignored? And am I becoming critical of my partner because I'm being ignored? Do I feel like they're always attacking me, maybe calling my faults out, and that's leading me to withdraw more and create more distance? If so, right, we plug in those strategies all the way from a conversation, right? It could be that you go to your spouse and you say, "Look, right now, I don't like where we're at, right? We've been together X amount of time. I can personally share, I don't like where we're at. And I know that where I want to be is I want you to feel excited around me. I want you to feel loved and safe and seen and heard and supported. And all those things I want to feel with you. And I'm having this conversation with you because I want to figure out how, right? I want to put the time in, put the investment so that whether it's a week, a month, we're able to say, I feel those things, right? It all starts with a conversation, and that's left up to you, right? Your willingness to jump in and have that conversation with your partner. If this episode resonated with you, share it. Share it with your partner. Let them know, hey, listen to this. What's our next steps? Let's do something together. Share it with somebody you care. If you're in the the Greensboro area looking for support, reach out to Santos Counseling. We got a group of counselors there. Awesome, amazing people. We're happy to help in any way that we can. If we can't help, we'll help find some kind of resource or another referral that may be able to get you trucking in the right direction. I will see you in the next episode.